this amazing stranger from the planet Krypton, the Man of Steel, Superman.
He's the Man of Steel who's become the world's biggest superhero. But behind Superman's red cape and X-ray vision lies the sinister story of a Hollywood curse that many believe has blighted those associated with him. As the fifth Superman film hits our cinema screens, we reveal a dark tale of tragic accidents, suicide, murder, debilitating illness, and mental breakdown.
Most people, I think, have the sense not to flip out on the evening news. It's not a method I recommend.
If I were Warner Brothers, I would definitely go to a voodoo princess and ask that the curse be lifted.
I don't believe in things like curses, she says. Oh, dear.
The origins of Superman and the curse began in 1930s America, a country in the grip of a deep economic depression. In this climate of poverty and deprivation, Americans badly needed a hero, and it was two self-proclaimed comic book geeks who came to the rescue. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were the shy, bespectacled geniuses who created the Man of Steel and his alter ego in 1939. Clark Kent may have represented who they were, but in Superman, they created a superhero who was everything they wanted to be.
I was always pushed around by bullies and so forth, so that was one of my dreams.
I thought, gee, wouldn't it be great if I was a mighty person and these girls didn't know that this Claude here is really somebody special, and I'd help lead to this whole triangle setup of Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Superman.
Siegel and Shuster named Superman's characters after their own heroes. As tribute to their favourite movie idols, Clark came from Clark Gable and Kent from Kent Taylor. Lane was a homage to the pin-up singing stars the Lane sisters, and Lois was named after Lois Rothschild, the unrequited love from Jerry Siegel's school days.
Here's the pencil sketch of the original Superman, and that was the first cover of the Superman book. That was 1939.
The first issue of the comic book reveals Superman's origins on the planet Krypton and shows him being rocketed to Earth as a baby.
He has the build of a fairly normal man, a man in decent shape, and he's doing things that aren't terribly fantastic. Superman hears about a man beating his wife and zooms in and frightens the guy, and the guy faints. A little joke on the fact that the tough guy isn't really so tough after all. There were multiple Superman stories a month, and they ran into the problem of what do we do with this guy now? What is Superman going to do this week that he didn't do last week? So they began to add new powers, for one thing. Suddenly he flew, and then he flew faster, and then he began to get X-ray vision, and as time went on, it was sort of nothing Superman couldn't do. And so you begin to see a more physically muscular Superman.
Superman struck a chord with the American public and became a hero for both children and adults, symbolizing the dream of truth, justice, and the American way. His daring adventures gripped the nation, and it was only a matter of time before the Man of Steel made the leap from comic book to small screen.
Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane!
It's Superman!
The first man to don the blue tights was former boxer George Reeves in 1952. Every Monday night at 7 p.m, the whole country stopped to watch the adventures of Superman, turning Reeves into a huge Hollywood star.
Well, I enjoyed the George Reeves shows. I enjoyed him a lot. Him and Jack Larson as Jimmy Olsen. I thought that was quite inventive and funny and good. And I liked the Clark Kent character he played, who was a strong Clark Kent.
Lois, it's good to see you again.
All in the day's work, Clark. While you were out covering Stamp Day, Superman and I were cleaning up a cake.
They were in a little trouble with their special effects, but it was the 50s. So it's a little tough. Jumping out the window off a little springboard, flying, laying on a box, on that sound.
I always consider the curse, if there is one, to be the fact that that role really ruined or derailed George Reeves' acting career.
Bye now.
But when Reeves hung up his red cape after 104 episodes, he found himself typecast. The series was finished, and so was he. Nobody wanted to employ the Man of Steel. Reeves sunk into a deep depression and hit the bottle.
Old man rhythm is in my shoes. It's no use to...
It was the beginning of a downward spiral. In an attempt to hold on to his dwindling fame, Reeves threw riotous cocktail parties. And it was at one such evening on the 16th of June 1959 that the first Superman tragedy struck.
They were having drinks, and George came downstairs, complained about the noise, and went back upstairs after a brief argument. Those downstairs heard a gunshot, and according to the police report, Lenora Lemon, George's girlfriend at the time, said, "Oh, that's just George going upstairs shooting himself." There was a single gunshot wound to the head. The bullet entered his right temple, exited, and the bullet was lodged in the ceiling. He was lying nude in a pool of blood on his bed. The gun was at his feet.
Because of the alcohol and the drugs that were in his system, the police immediately identified or signed off on it as a suicide. But for years, there's been a lot of speculation around his death.
America was shocked to discover that the man who once flew faster than a speeding bullet had ended his own life with a shot in the head.
In 1959 America, that was not a pleasant subject at all. People did not have a way of processing that. There was a kind of taint of scandal to his death.
I don't want to be like old George Reeves, stuck in a Superman role.
Reeves' dramatic demise did nothing to dent the popularity of the Superman comic books. But while the publishers raked in a multi-million-dollar fortune, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who'd created Superman, were paid a paltry sum for the rights to their character. By the 1970s, they were virtually penniless.
We signed the release form trustfully, and now I'm working in the mailroom, and the publisher has earned hundreds of millions of dollars.
I think Jerry and Joe felt like they ought to be taken care of somewhat, respected a bit for having brought this character in that virtually created the comic book industry.
You might think they're millionaires, but Jerry, how much did you get for the rights to Superman?
Exactly $130.
Split between the two.
Right, $65 apiece.
On Thanksgiving Day weekend, my hope for you both is that somehow proper recompense comes to you.
Thank you very much, Howard.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, John.
And there's more in a moment when the Hoops
recompense
learn
didn't
just
come
how
for Siegel and
important
Shuster. In
friendships are.
1975, to add insult to injury, Warner Brothers announced they were making a blockbuster Superman movie. At $80 million, it was the most expensive film of the decade.
My idea was just, okay, let's do a big movie.
You're watching Channel 4 with a warm Sunday morning welcome
that were,
from the Hoops.
Let's face it, very, very simple. And that was really the idea. Let's do a big film. Let's do a film, a serious film.
The news was more than Siegel and Shuster could bear.
For the past 30 years, we have received nothing at all from Superman.
It's been 30 years of deprivation.
When Siegel realized, yet again, that they wouldn't benefit financially from their comic book creation, the mild-mannered Clark Kent took matters into his own hands and typed a dramatic, damning public declaration that would haunt the Superman movies. The publishers of Superman comic books killed my days, murdered my nights, choked my happiness, and strangled my career. I consider the executives to be economic murderers and money-mad monsters, and I, Jerry Siegel, the co-originator of Superman, curse the Superman movie. The dark days of Superman were about to begin. In 1975, Warner Brothers revealed that they were making a multi-million-dollar movie of Superman. But the creators of The Man of Steel, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, were outraged that they would earn just $65 apiece from their superhero invention. Angry and bitter, they placed a dark curse on the movie. But this Hollywood hex didn't deter the unknown actor picked to play Superman. Christopher Reeves' chiseled features embodied the fantasy hero for a new generation.
They didn't really necessarily require a name. Superman is a big enough name. I don't know of another actor who could have pulled it off. with a sense of humor, the physicality, and the fact that he nailed it.
Excuse me. That's a bad outfit.
You know, nobody believes in anything before it's done. And at that point, the first immediate replies were, "We'll never make him fly."
The movie was a box office smash, partly due to groundbreaking special effects that helped to create the illusion, for the first time in cinematic history, that a man could really fly.
You know, is it a bird, is it a plane? No, it's Superman. In that first film particularly, people seeing Superman fly, you know, mouth wide open with absolute amazement.
He flew in about...
It would take pioneering techniques, using ropes and harnesses, to create the special effects that would inspire wonder in cinema audiences.
There were a lot of trial and error misses. And in particular, the scene where we flew off the balcony in the first flying scene, we were attached to our harnesses. I had a fellow named Derek who did like to tipple on the wheel that controlled my harness. And we would go off semi together in the air, and then I would go flying out here and whack back into Chris, or Chris would go up and I'd drop down, or they'd drop us in the bushes, or we'd hit the wall. I think that first takeoff scene we did something like 60-something times. And Christopher just stayed in character all the time. He really believed in the myth of Superman. Chris was much more Clark Kent in real life than he was Superman.
The filmmakers pulled off an amazing coup by casting the world's biggest box office name, Marlon Brando, to play Superman's dad, Jor-El.
You just look at Marlon on screen and he's so magnetic. Such a presence and that such a great voice.
My friends, you know me to be neither rash nor impulsive. I'm not given to wild, unsupported statements. And I tell you that we must evacuate this planet immediately.
He was still the biggest named star in the world. He was still in pretty good nick. This was before he got very fat and just took the money and waddled when he turned up on a film set. And they had to pay him a huge amount of money for this coffin, a spit of a part, really.
They offered him almost $4 million, plus about 16% of the gross income from the movie, for what amounted to 11 and a half days of work, 8 minutes of film. It was one of the best deals ever made in Hollywood.
That was the first time I'd realized that actually Marlon did a lot of reading of his lines from around the set, or from a card, because he didn't believe in learning them.
It's the only answer, Lara. If he remains here with us, he will die as surely as we will.
But why Earth, Jor-El? They're primitives, thousands of years behind us.
He will need that advantage to survive.
Superman was the film that kind of broke Brando as an actor. That after that, he was never quite the same. He'd got away with something on Superman that no actor should perhaps ever be allowed to get away with, which is earning a multi-million-dollar paycheck and not actually doing the work.
Immediately after the first Superman movie, Brando just went out of control, really. A lot of people would have, I suppose if you got 14 million, Hollywood people might have put it up their nose, not Marlon Brando. He put it in his stomach.
Overpaid and overblown, Brando's film appearances would be few and far between after Superman. He became fiercely protective of his private life and turned into a virtual recluse. His next most talked about performance, however, was not on the silver screen, but in a courtroom.